Hello again! Feels like I just talked to you guys. In fact, the observant may notice that I'm wearing the same shirt. Trying to save time by getting a lot of the recording done ahead of time so that I can actually enjoy my weekends. I don't have a whole lot of time to do these videos during the week. So I'm trying to get ahead of myself instead of playing catch up all the time. So this particular issue isn't actually a strictly liberal versus conservative issue, but it's something that I feel very, very strongly about. Genetically modified organisms. And as I said that, my viewers split into three groups. Group 1, oh geez, he's one of those people. Group 2, finally, someone talking sense maybe. And Group 3, huh? So I want to start off with some background information on me. I am a science geek. I love science. She blinded me with science. Great song. I hope that that didn't count as copyright infringement. But, you know, genetic engineering is just downright cool. I'm a huge fan, to be honest, for a few reasons. First, it's got the potential, the obvious potential, to cure diseases, improve quality of life, and generally just make things better for everybody. Second, there's some really cool applications already being pioneered, you know, just for wow factor. Glowfish and the Starlight Avatar. I love that one, and I can't wait for them to improve it, because right now it doesn't live very long, it's not very bright, and it's expensive. But, you know, the potential here, I mean, glow-in-the-dark plants. Way cooler than those lame little walkway lights that don't work. Seriously, I've never seen one actually working. But finally, and certainly not least, the only way I am ever going to have a pet dinosaur is through genetic engineering. I'm thinking Compsognathus, maybe a Microraptor. Something small, something that isn't going to eat my cats. So yeah, I love genetic engineering. Way cool stuff. So keep that in mind as I say the next bit. We have to stop the genetically engineered foods from destroying us and the environment, and we need to do it now. Contradictory much? No. Let me explain. No, it's too much. Let me sum up. There is no long-term safety data on GMO foods. None. The little data that there is falls into two categories, and I will come back to that. The use of herbicide-resistant strains, and that's the most common type, has led to an exponential increase in herbicide uses. So, like I said, zero benefits to GMO foods. None whatsoever. It's a bold claim, right? And in science, an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. Well, the biggest claim made by the biotech industry is that with the projected population growth of the planet Earth, we need their GMOs to feed the world. Well, the problem with that is that the USDA's Environmental Research Group has shown that in the last 15 years, GMO crops have failed to produce higher yields, and sometimes actually produce lower yields than conventional crops. So this whole we need genetic engineering to feed the world, backwards. Well, how about at least making things more profitable and easier for farmers, right? I mean, that would be a benefit. Except that the genetically modified seeds cost more than conventional seeds, in some cases twice as much, and the price of them has risen about 50% just between 2001 and 2010. And the weeds are now becoming herbicide resistant as well, of course, so we need more and more of the herbicide to keep them in check. So it's actually costing the farmers a lot more. Some of them, when they switch away from the GMOs, actually find that their profits nearly double. So speaking of herbicides, the GM crops were supposed to reduce the amount of chemicals needed, right? Well, according to the US Geological Survey, that hasn't happened at all. I'm going to start by showing you the time lapse. For the numbers, the use of glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, has increased 16-fold. That's huge. Now, of course, Monsanto insists that glyphosate is perfectly safe, But the World Health Organization recently classified it as probably carcinogenic. Of course, Monsanto has instantly dismissed this as junk science, despite the fact that there was a similar classification made years ago that Monsanto battled and got taken away. Now, the decision of the WHO was based on a study of farm workers, who they found were at a greater risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was also based on numerous animal studies, and studies showing the effect it has on human cells in a controlled environment. But it's not just the World Health Organization. For one thing, they made their assessment based on research that's been done for decades. But there was an interesting study done recently by the Journal of Organic Systems showing a possible link between Roundup and various chronic diseases, including diabetes and asthma. Now, as any good scientist will tell you, correlation does not prove causation. It doesn't even necessarily imply it. A great example of this is Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Yeah, I love these guys. They're great. They have shown a correlation between the number of pirates sailing the seas and global temperatures. So lack of pirates causes global warming. So like I said, correlation does not prove causation. But, just because we're all less healthy at the same time we're being exposed to more of a poisonous chemical does not prove that the chemical is making us sick. What it does do is refute the biotech industry's long-heralded claim that we've been eating it for decades and there have been no negative health consequences. And it invites more detailed research. So they're saying, you've been eating it for 20 years and nothing bad's happening. Well, bad things are happening. And that, to me, says that we need to look into whether or not those are connected. But, there are other ingredients in Roundup besides glyphosate. And some of them are actually more toxic to humans than the main ingredient. Here's a fun one. This ingredient is listed as an inert component. Polyethyloxylated toluamine. It's been shown deadly to human embryonic, placental, and umbilical cells. We are eating this stuff every day, and it builds up in the fatty tissues of your body and in the female reproductive system. So, yeah, no benefits whatsoever, and a whole lot of potential problems. And I haven't even gotten to the fun ones yet. So I'm just going to list off a couple of articles and stories real quick. Farmers report better animal health with non-GMO feed. This is anecdotes, individual farmers who switch from the GMOs to non-GMO feed, and their animals seem healthier. Okay. Then we've got feeding GMOs to hamsters led to sterility and birth defects. Now, this study didn't make it into any peer-reviewed journals, and the author may have jumped the gun on his conclusions. He found a link and declared it a proof, which is not quite how it works. But it's worth a second look. When someone comes up with unexpected results, the best thing to do in science is to replicate them. Maybe repeat the experiment with tighter controls, isolate the cause. What you don't want to do is just laugh it off and say, this guy's a crack. That's what's being done. There was another one. The Seralini study has been republished, showing decreased average lifespan and increased tumors in rats fed GMO corn. Now, this study does have some methodological issues, and the results are not conclusive, but still very alarming. One of the issues was the number of rats used, which was, I think, 90. And the other was the strain of rat, which is more prone to tumors. So one could say, well, the rats were going to get tumors anyway. But here's what's interesting. The rats fed the GMO corn developed a lot more. And on average, their lifespan was shorter. This study was retracted originally after the journal came under pressure from the biotech industry. And now it's been republished, and it's drawing the same kind of flack. So again, maybe instead of dismissing it, we should try to repeat it. Longer term, larger sample group, better controls, but no one's doing that. They're just dismissing it. So you're probably already seeing a pattern here. Most of the studies that link GMO food itself rather than the chemicals sprayed on them are small, underfunded, rushed, and have some issues with them. But the studies showing them to be safe are huge and well-funded, funded by the companies making them. In fact, the most recent GMOs are safe study came out fairly recently. This was a huge study spanning 18 years of data and 100 billion animals. That sounds pretty legit, right? Well, then you have to look into confirmation bias. Remember, I mentioned that before. The author of the study was Alison van Eenenum, and I probably butchered that name. Sorry, Alison. Anywho, this study claims to have examined birth defect and general health data for animals over the last 18 years and found no significant change in the health as GMO crops were introduced to the feed. But Eenenum worked for Monsanto, first as a project lead geneticist and later as a political lobbyist to Congress for the biotech industry. So there's a possible red flag there for bias. It was also published by a journal whose president used to work for Monsanto. The study also selectively cherry-picks data to support the initial claim. A very thorough and detailed review of the study can be found at GM Watch. Here's the link. But in short, once you know what you're looking for, it becomes quite clear that this study is nothing more than a propaganda piece paid for and written by Monsanto about their own products. And that really sums up the research on both sides. We've got underpaid scientists showing potential health problems and being laughed at. And on the other side, we've got the companies who make billions off their products claiming they're safe. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. And these GMO crops were introduced with no regulation at all under the Reagan administration. Thank you so much for that, by the way. And now, all we're asking for is a label so that we know what we're eating. And here is where the politics comes in. This is a democracy, right? Well, a representative democracy anyway. We elect people to work for our interests. Well, consider this. A New York Times poll showed that 93% of Americans would like GMOs to be labeled as of 2013. Now, we all know that I'm a liberal, which means given a Republican or a Democratic candidate, I'll probably go with the Dem. And here's just one more example why. Senate Bill S-809, Genetically Engineered Food Right to Know Act, requires clear labeling of genetically engineered foods, introduced by Senator Boxer, Democrat, California, in 2013. Reintroduced in 2015 by Boxer, Senator Blumenthal, D, Connecticut, and Representative DeFazio, D, Oregon. Then you've got House Resolution 4432, the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act, nicknamed the DARK, Deny Americans the Right to Know Act. It prohibits such labeling at a federal level and forbids states from enacting their own labeling laws, introduced by Representative Pompeo, R, Kansas. Then there's Representative King, Republican, Iowa, who tried to amend the 2014 Farm Bill to prohibit any state from setting stricter food regulatory standards than any other state, essentially saying that unless every single state agrees on a food safety issue, no state can require it. Thankfully, that amendment was rejected because the House was controlled by Democrats at the time. This group claims that they want more power in the hands of the state and less in the federal, but that's not what I'm seeing here. You see the pattern? The Democrats, they want the right to know. The Republicans, they don't. Now this is getting long already, and I haven't even touched on the environmental impact that GMO crops are having, so I'm going to sum it up as quickly as I can. It's bad. Bad for the water, bad for the farmers, bad for the humans, bad for the wildlife. It's probably causing miscarriages in both wildlife and humans. And that story is too personal for YouTube. Sorry. Long story short, there is no benefit some proven dangers, some possible dangers, and a whole lot of unknown. All I want is a label. And then, as the Republicans say, we can let the free market decide where the future of agriculture lies. They're all about the free market, aren't they? Let us make an informed decision, and then it will be a free market. This is the will of the people. Let it be done already, for crying out loud. Thanks for watching.